Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam. Welcome back. I'll hand back to you to go straight into the second session.
Okay, shall I deal with questions now? Or
I think if we could save them for just before the next break session, we can allow you to continue where you left off with the first verse, inshallah.
okay, inshallah. So what I'll do is this one was at the end of the last one, so I might pick this one up.
Yeah, inshallah.
All right, then. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبيه الكريم. So to continue then, we were talking about leadership within the Muslim community, the Muslim society. And a question came about particular challenges that we are having within our Muslim community, where people who are in positions of leadership are not sort of as welcoming to new ideas or new ways of looking at things, and not welcoming of allowing the younger generation to come in and take positions of leadership to help progress the Muslim community as a whole. So this obviously this is a well-known issue. It's not obscure, but there are different sides to it. First of all, if we look at the side of the people who have this position of leadership, as a migrant community, when and we're looking like 2-3 generations between the third and the fourth perhaps now, those people who took on positions of leadership within Muslim community, I'm talking about community leadership, religious leadership specifically, there was not like a process that the people went through, and they put their CVs forward to some sort of selection board, and the CVs were shortlisted, and then people were invited for interview, and they had to maybe give a presentation, give an idea of their vision, what they think was the best way to progress, and based upon that, this selection committee would then meet and have shura and consultation, and then decide amongst the possible candidates which one would be best for the post. Obviously, none of that happened, and it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. That's not the fault of anybody who's taken a position of leadership. So in this phase of a migrant community trying to find its feet in a new area, a new place, we have to be realistic about what criteria and qualifications people had who took on positions of leadership. So if there's no one taking a leadership, then what's going to happen is just going to be chaos and a free for all. So you had people who of various capabilities and various qualifications who were placed into positions of leadership, and Allah knows people's hearts the best, and we don't want to confirm or deny what people have in their hearts. But as I said, the various criteria, various qualifications, some obviously more suited to the role than others, and people looking to get out of the role varied across individuals. That was an inevitability. There's nothing you can do about that. So once that has embedded itself, then as the next generation, who is much more in tune with the wider society and what's happening in wider society, and the movements and directions in wider society, and what progress should look like for the Muslim community. Trying to present that to the earlier generation of leaders is challenging. So first, like I said, first looking at the elderly side, so they have this notion that when there was no one around to take these positions, they took on the position and responsibility and authority, and you know that there's no way anyone can discredit that attitude. And so they have sacrificed. They have put in perhaps money, time, effort. That's taken them away from other things that they were doing, taken them away from their family, from their livelihood, taken them from their rest and relaxation, all that kind of stuff. They have made a big sacrifice in order to take on that position. And now another generation who has a different understanding of the context in which they live will come on and demand sometimes quite fundamental changes in how that whatever kind of position they're in, if it's a masjid or a community center or an organization or whatever it is, demand sort of fundamental changes which they are not happy with. Why they're not happy with is something that can be much more complicated. It's much more complicated. But the fact is that they're not happy with, and there's nothing in the governance structures of their particular organization or masjid or so on to indicate how a transition of power can be conducted from the elder generation and the young generation. So from the elder generation, there's that reluctance. So either there's a fear that they are, having made all this sacrifice in their life, that they are now losing some level of influence and power and status within their community. And also a fear that, the changes that are being demanded, are they really changes that will benefit the Muslim community or not? Are they really changes which are sustainable, are for the overall good of the community? So there's those two things going on. For the younger generation, who are, like I said, more in tune with what's happening in society, there's a great deal of frustration. Because it seems very, very obvious what things need to be changed, and the longer we don't change them, the more difficulty we are causing for the Muslim community. So there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of goodwill, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and there's a lot of frustration because all the good ideas, all the energy that they have is not being utilized. So we have these issues between the generations. I've just stated what the issues are. So I realize I haven't actually provided much of a solution. So the only way I can see this working is the religious scholars, because not everybody in these organizations has religious training or has gone through a process of preparing themselves for some sort of leadership position within a religious community. They really need to highlight to both sides, to the elderly side, saying that if you don't allow a path for the younger generation to take over, your organization is dead, it's finished, it's over. because it will get so out of tune with what's happening in society that it will lose relevance, and all the effort and sacrifices that you made when you were young and in the Middle Ages will go to rot. There will be no lasting impact of all that effort and sacrifice. So that has to be made very clear to them. And we see very clearly from the role model of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that he very clearly prepared his companions. He very clearly ensured that there were people of high caliber, high capability around him, who were then able to carry that burden of the message of Islam after he passed away. And that was part of his responsibility. So, and this is the other thing that we need to make clear to the elder generation, is that part of the responsibility, part of any leadership responsibility, is that you make sure that you are nurturing and preparing and giving access and opportunity to the people who will eventually take over. No one is here forever. No one is here forever. So if you don't allow that process to happen in a organized, smooth and natural way, then your organization is going to be in turmoil. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to have the kind of impact that you want it to have. That's on the one hand. So that's what needs to be explained to the elderly people. And the younger generation, it's a mark of success that young people are there who are ready to make that level of sacrifice and commitment to an organization, and are open to carrying that burden of responsibility. Because like I mentioned just before the break, it's not for the faint-hearted. For the people who truly understand what leadership is, it's an anxious, it's a level of anxiety where you constantly have to be thinking about your conduct and what you're saying and what you're doing and the impact of your behavior, because it has a multiplier effect. If you're just an individual on your own, your small sort of family, your sphere of influence, there's not that many people you will be harming if you do anything untoward or anything bad. However, in a position of leadership, what you do is amplified multiple times, and the reward for that is amplified multiple times, but also the sin is amplified multiple times if you do if you're not careful with what you say and what you do. So it's a mark of great hope that the younger generation, there are people there who are willing to take it on, and we have to find ways of convincing the existing structures, the existing organizations, that if a smooth and natural channel is not provided for the outlet of this energy and enthusiasm, then it won't be coming into your organization to sustain it for the next generation or two. It will go into another endeavor, and then maybe a new organization will be created, and your organization will there will be no one left to look after it, no one who really understands the proper context to look after it. So we have those two things, and we reach out to people of scholarly reputation, scholarly respect, who we are hopeful that these people are putting the benefit, the wider benefit of the Muslim community over and above any kind of personal gains and aspirations. I hope that that gives some level of answer to that question. And I recognize that it is a deep issue, and it's happening across the country and in lots of different contexts. But the first part is to understand the position of the other side, and then to bring in people both sides respect in order to find a solution, a peaceful solution to the tensions. I'm not in favor of people taking over buildings and changing the locks, and then the local authorities get called in, and the police get called in, and this is not a way of conduct for Muslims. And if someone is holding on to some sort of place or and you think that's being done is being unjust, and it's not this and it's not that, it's not this, people don't live forever. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has a plan above all our plans. So don't lose your energy and enthusiasm. Put it to good use, perhaps not in the use that you thought it was going to go in, perhaps in other channels. And there are multiple channels for us to, we are not short of areas, problem areas that need people's energy and enthusiasm to get involved in. And maybe if you focus in another area for a while, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause that particular issue that you were worried about to be smoothed out and allow a smooth channel for you to come back in. Wallahu a'lam. So to come back to the direct lessons learned from the verse then. So leadership, as I mentioned, is the true leadership is a very lonely place, because you have to be worried about everybody and what everybody's saying to you, and why are they saying it to you? Are they trying to get undue influence? Do they have a personal agenda? Do that group want this? Why do they want this? What's going to be the overall outcome and impact on the people that you are responsible for, or the area that you're responsible for? Are you going to leave the position in a better place than when you found it? And you have to be worried about your own self as well. Even inside of us, we know that we have a struggle going on. We know we have our ego. We know we have those voices inside of us that telling us, you're in this position because you're the best, and you are more whatever, more learned, more experienced, have better skills, better knowledge, better this, better that, better this than everybody. So you deserve this position, and therefore you allow that ego inside of you to grow and grow and grow until you start abusing your position of power, and you think that you're so wonderful that it's actually not an abuse of power. It's just what naturally should come to someone who is as wonderful as you. So we have that internal challenge as well, that ego inside of us, that is that we're told that we have to keep on fighting. That part of us that is distracted by the glitter and glamour of this worldly life. That part of us that is trying to keep us tied down and rooted to the worldly pleasures of this existence. And we have that internal struggle as well. So a position of leadership is a very lonely place, because you can't even trust your own self, and you have to be fighting your own self as well as trying to work out who's telling you good and who's not telling you good around you. So as a result of that, true leadership, the people who take this on, male and female, deserve our respect, even if we disagree with them. So even if we disagree with them, we are careful how we express that disagreement. We're careful the words we choose, the tone we choose. We don't in any way try to indicate that they have bad intentions, for example. Because one of the easiest way to lose somebody is to try to tell them that why they are doing X, Y, and Z, and it has bad intentions. Because then after that, the person is close to you. The person is, first of all, it's a claim you're making which is impossible for you to make. At the very best, it would be an educated guess. At the very, very best. We know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who knows what's going on in everybody's hearts. No one else has the ability to know that. And if you interpret someone's outward behavior in a negative way, you can be very, very easily wrong. There may be aspects of what's happened to the person, or what they're involved in, or what they're trying to do, that you're completely oblivious to, and you have no idea. So be very, very careful before you start challenging someone's intentions, because you are now putting yourself on the same level as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in knowing what those intentions were. So good behavior and conduct even in disagreements. The next thing, all matters should be first referred back to Allah and His Messenger. So we don't put our opinions over the opinions of Allah and His Messenger. And this basically is telling us that whatever guidance we find in the Quran and in the prophetic ahadith, the authentic prophetic ahadith, this is our first source of direction. When we're trying to work out what we should be doing in our life, or how we should be doing it, how we should be conducting ourselves, this is where we go to first. We don't sit down and have our own internal reflection and think, oh, this will be good to do, or that will be not good to do. Our first source is always the going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Having said that, lots of people will be confronted with situations where they can't find explicit references, or very clear and detailed references for how they should be conducting themselves in their particular context, their particular scenario. That doesn't happen always, because sometimes if you're just talking about how you should be interacting with your fellow brother or sister, or within the family, or within the community, those interpersonal relationships, we have lots and lots of guidance, which is as relevant today, if not more so, than at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But other aspects of life which have changed drastically in how we go about our daily lives, the kinds of work that we do, transport that we have, modes of communication that we have, business areas that we might want to go into, topics of study that we might want to spend time researching. All of these kinds of things are drastically different. And so we still go back to find out what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if it can be found, and what the Prophet Muhammad said. And then if we don't find anything that is obvious to us, then we ask someone who we trust in. So there has to be an element of trust, and who we feel has the relevant level of knowledge and experience in Islamic understanding. So it doesn't have to be, someone who's, professor, or someone who's academic. It can be, just someone whose character, whose conduct that you are happy with, that you have some level of trust that what the person will tell you will be for the betterment, your own betterment, that they're not going to tell you something which they will get some benefit out of. So they're not thinking about themselves, they're thinking about your long-term benefit and what's going to be overall good for you, and you are happy with the level of knowledge and learning that they have in deen, in religion. So you can then direct your question, and that person may know something that they can help you, or they may not know. So there's no guarantee that the person will always be able to answer all your questions. And if they are, truly someone who is sincere, then they will very clearly tell you that they don't know what they don't know. Very clear, and that they don't want to take on the burden of saying things to you which are outside their area of knowledge and expertise. Next from the surah is the level